What's up? My name is Yancey Strickler from the Artist Corporations Foundation. Sorry I can't be there in person today, but I wanted to tell you about this project that we're working on and what it might mean for California very soon. So first, just a little bit about who I am. I grew up in Southwest Virginia, the son of a musician who never quite made it. I always grew up in a creative household and deeply embedded in the creative life. My initial career was as a music critic and film critic, writing for places like The Village Voice. I started a tiny record label putting out music by bands I loved, and I'm one of the co founders of Kickstarter. Now, while the CEO of Kickstarter, I led the company in becoming one of the first public benefit corporations, which was a new legal structure that was created to allow companies to have both a for profit mission as well as a larger purpose that was just as important as that financial goal. Uh, Alongside Kickstarter, I also co founded the Creative Independent. I'm the author of 3 books about the internet, economics, and the act of creativity. And I'm also the co founder of a project called Meta Label, which is focused on helping creative people cooperate. And it's in my post Kickstarter days that the A-Corp really started to develop and the need for it became really clear to me. Because I returned to the world of being a creator, to being a person putting out work online, making a living as a writer. And I found myself in a very familiar cycle of despair, of putting out work, chasing clicks, chasing audiences, trying to do whatever I felt I could or needed to do to be seen, and just constantly being disappointed and sad by it. I did the full gamut of the crash and the hiatus, all those things. And I eventually came to see that really the job of being a creative person is so different now than it used to be. In the old world, which was more gate kept with less opportunity for all, the people who were in the system had lots of structures of support for them. But today, in a world without gatekeepers, where we're all empowered to go out and do our thing, which is good, the downside is we're left doing everything ourselves. So I became obsessed with this idea of how is it that we could do things together? How is it that I, as a creative person, wouldn't be competing with people like me, but instead we would mutually support each other? And this is the project of Meta Label that happened, trying to imagine a structure where a group of people could make and put out work together. But the Artist Corporation project came from thinking of that form as not just a casual social agreement or something you do online, but thinking of it as something that would really be represented in the wider world in a real way. And so, as an A-Corp, that same idea of a group of people doing something together, it could have more powers like the ability to raise funds, the ability to get healthcare, the ability to more cleanly own your intellectual property. And so based on this sort of vision, this desire of what I wanted and what my peers wanted as creative people, we began embarking on this project to try to make this an actual reality. And so this began by talking to lots of artists. We held events across the country. This is one we did in LA, where we just heard people out about what is it you're experiencing as an artist, as a creative person in your work? What's hard for you? What's missing? What is it you're having to do over and over? And one of the things we heard was that people were going to entertainment lawyers to make these custom structures for them that allowed them to operate, but they actually didn't understand what was being done, and it was often expensive, and it was sort of a pain to do over and over. We took note of that. We also put up a survey online where more than 1,600 artists responded by telling us about their practices. These are people across every sort of creative medium, visual artists being the largest category. And they told us how it is they're structured. About half of people are doing things on their own, about half are collaborating with others, about half have no formal legal structure at all, so there's no protections at all for them, while half are playing in the world of LLCs or nonprofits, some of these other options that artists have been pushed into. We also asked how it is that they fund their work. Most of it is through their own self-funding, not a lot available in terms of investment, not a lot of grants available anymore. And we also heard that the most challenging things were raising money, getting access to healthcare, what a pain it is to manage your business, your practice, and how hard it is to do things with others. It's hard to pool resources with other people. We also heard what people wanted. They wanted some sort of form, some sort of system that would be affordable that would make it clear what they owned, that would allow them to more easily share things, share resources with others, and that would give them access to investors, to money, to capital, to actually pursue their projects. And so about a year and a half ago, we partnered with an amazing California-based attorney, Suze McCormick, who's done incredible things in the past, to begin to turn these insights and these ideas into a practical reality. And by that, I mean making an actual law. So we began working on a project to create a new version of an LLC. So taking the underlying structure of an LLC, kind of the most vanilla corporate entity there is, legal entity there is, and creating a variation on it that was sort of all the best pieces that an entertainment lawyer would help an artist do, as well as new capabilities that we saw that could open up. We were all working in the same structure together to make a new form. And this form is the A-Corp, or the Artist Corporation. Now, a year ago, I shared this idea for the first time on stage at TED, and there talked about this need, talked about the opportunity, and afterwards had people approach me from Colorado to say, hey, you should come here. You should come start this here. We're into things like this, and we have a thriving creative community. And I knew from the previous experience with public benefit corporations, which I saw at Kickstarter, that corporate law like this is set at the state level, and you go state by state establishing it. And so I began making trips to Colorado, made a half dozen trips there over the past year, meeting with local nonprofit leaders, artists, political leaders, business leaders, everyone who would talk to me, and found an incredibly warm and welcoming environment where people weren't just excited about what this was, they deeply understood why it was necessary. Meeting with a mayor of a small town in the western slope of Colorado who talks about how arts and culture are why people love to visit or live in one town versus another. And it's just a core part of what makes those places what they are. And yet the people who actually do that struggle. There's not a lot there to support them. They're not a part of the system. And so this is exactly what we're trying to change. And so we've had a lot of success in Colorado. We have drafted a bipartisan bill sponsored by leading Republicans and leading Democrats that was introduced into the Colorado Senate last month. And just last week had its very first vote in committee where it passed 5-0, both Republicans and Democrats voting for it to move the A-Corp bill forward. Now, what this law does is some very specific and interesting things. First, the A-Corp statute says that an artist corporation must be at least 51% owned and controlled by artists and creative people. So if you see something that's an A-Corp, you will know this is an artist and creator controlled entity. Second, an A-Corp has an artistic mission. So as an LLC, the purpose is, you could be a dentist's office, you could be anything. With an A-Corp, you're asked, what is it that you're trying to produce? What is the art or culture that's coming from this? And the A-Corp protects that mission. It establishes creative rights that says these are things that only the artist and creator can deal with, or all decisions must be held accountable to this core artistic mission and goal, similar to what PBCs did for allowing for non-financial values and goals to drive a company. The A-Corp law also creates a new regime for IP protection, and there's a couple key points of this. One is that by default, all intellectual property has reversionary rights to the artist, meaning when you contribute your work to your A-Corp, you're essentially licensing to it, but in the event of the A-Corp dissolving, folding, that work returns back to you rather than the creditors. So we take it as a default assumption that the creative work belongs to the people who made it, unless they explicitly decide to sell it in some way. Second, the law says that when you contribute intellectual property to your A-Corp, that should be counted as a capital contribution, meaning it should be valued and should be taken into account when considering the value of your overall entity. Now, what this could mean is that work that isn't even for sale yet, or it's sitting in your studio, can count as the actual value of your artist corporation, which is something that you could use to take a loan against or use to get access to other resources. The A-Corp also allows for a separation of creative rights from economic and operational rights. So, maybe you can have input on some financial things from other people, but when it comes to creative decisions, it's only you, the artist, that has a say. And finally, A-Corps are very easy and flexible to create. There's a whole web interface we've made to do it. And when creating an A-Corp, with just the check of a box, you can create shares and collective ownership of your practice. And what this does is it creates a new security, the A-Corp share, a unit of ownership in a creative practice that can be used to compensate someone, that can be sold to an investor to raise money, or just a way that you can hold and realize the value of your work. Now, this is all in the very first law we created, the Colorado Artist Company Act, which at our website, artistcorporations.com/law, you can see the actual text of the law. Now, laws are not the easiest things to read, so we've made these human comments that let you see what this actually does. So you can read through there and get a sense of really what it accomplishes. And the site also shows you how you can compare what an A-Corp does to existing entities. A lot of what the A-Corp does can be done with the right sort of custom articles of incorporation or operating agreement for your LLC. But what's different with an A-Corp is that by a lot of us using the same structure, it creates a collective benefit. So, for example, we can go to an insurance company and say, you should offer a group plan for A-Corps. Offer a group plan for artists. And this can get us better healthcare access, more affordable healthcare access than we could get on our own. Also, by all using the same form, it makes the A-Corp share, this new security, a thing that can be actually valuable, can be a new asset that exists within our communities that we can use to generate and share value. We also have on the site an A-Corp calculator, which is a tool that lets you see what your practice would look like as an A-Corp and compare it to existing forms. You can factor in how much money you make, what your collaborators are, whether or not you want to have health insurance, and it will give you a sense of what the A-Corp will do. And we've also built out a whole registration process that shows you exactly what the law means. For example, the fact that you can choose how you want to balance art and money in your practice, or how it is that you distribute ownership, or how it is that we protect with that 51% rule of artist control. All of this stuff is available at artistcorporations.com. But I'm here talking to you all because Colorado is the focus this year, and we are optimistic we will get the first bill passed in Colorado this spring. But next year, we're bringing this to California. And we want to take the same approach in California as we had in Colorado, to seek a bipartisan bill and to have a community-led process. In Colorado, I've been talking to people, helping to guide things, but it's really the folks there who are part of that community who are leading the way and who best understand what's needed. And it's going to be the same in California and every other place the A-Corp will go. Our goal is to be the national entity that helps provide ideas and intent and provide support where necessary. But it is the artists, the creators, the arts workers, and administrators themselves who best understand each environment, each ecosystem. And we want to collaborate with them, which is what we're going to do in California. Now, I fully appreciate that artist corporation is an oxymoron. They feel like two words that do not belong together. And I spent a lot of time early on wrestling with that question. What does that mean? But actually, I think it's important that we embrace our economic rights and we see ourselves as a real workforce, as workers, as members of society, not just people who are separate from it or who live at the margins or are rounding errors in larger systems. Now, the word corporation gives us a lot of bad vibes because what we've seen with the C-Corp economy, which we know well, profit maximization, extract value, who cares about the public? But I think the A-Corp economy, it's going to be different. It is not about profit maximization. It is about creative outputs. It is about making things that we value and love. It is about putting the people who make the work first. And art and culture are deep social investments just inherently. So I think we're going to see this as a very different world. And you could even just take it down to a core idea. The C-Corp, it's make money no matter what. The A-Corp economy, it's to make another one, to make more work, to keep perpetuating our creative visions, but to do it with increasing dignity, security, and a sense of appreciation where we can pay each other, pay our collaborators, and we know we can keep going. We can make another one. That's all it's about. Let me keep making another one. This is a project with centuries ahead of it. That's the way we're thinking about this. We're trying to make a form that matches the needs of today and empowers the next generation of artists and creators to go way farther than we ever imagined. During the first few years of this process, it's about getting the A-Corp legally established in different places. It's about getting health insurance companies to make plans for artists so that we can get access to better healthcare. And then it's building out the economic environment and system that will allow our projects in this process to not just survive, but thrive, to not be charity, but to be a real form of value creation that all of society appreciates. And that's letting us as creative people be increasingly paid and more secure and able to keep going. This is a huge, huge project. It needs so much help. It needs so much help. And so I'm grateful to be sharing it here with all of you. You can learn more at artistcorporations.com. My name is Yancey Strickler, and thank you for your time.